and Claudia, or even the black players like Gaynell or Bunsen T. Nobody bothered with last names. Here today, gone tomorrow. Siesta Key was a continual summer party. Gina was a young local who worked summer jobs, quite unlike the crazy Canadian, German, and UK tourists who would lie on the beach and burn lobster red. Dave would notice them on his way to work, lolling about on their beer guts in the hot white sand. This was way before they got sunburned, after David would not see them again as they remained inside rental cars and literally saved their skins. David's job as a boatman didn't pay him much, but it was enough for him to afford his rental, save some money for Geneva, and especially pay for his air tickets to Geneva and Hong Kong. "Can you take me to work now, Dave?" said Gina as she donned her Starbucks uniform. It was only 8:30 a.m., but they had played 2 hours of tough volleyball, taken a hot shower, made love again, and were now getting dressed for the day. They piled into David's old Ford pickup and drove through the steamy heat to the local Starbucks on the beach. He dropped her off. With luck, his truck would make it back to his beach house without breaking down. He thought about all the freedoms Americans enjoyed without even giving it a second thought. It was not like that in Hong Kong. By the time 6 p.m. had arrived, David was ready for more volleyball. Despite his long day, he was looking forward to seeing Gina and the acquaintances he was starting to call his friends. But Gina was not there. Instead, an older, almost carbon copy of Gina, with thick blonde hair under a bright red baseball cap and matching bathing suit, was spiking the ball in her place. What was interesting about this new girl was her spike. She had a terrific jump and tremendous power, and she played intelligently too. Sometimes she would set up to spike that, but then at the last minute, tip it over the outstretched arms of the blocker on the other side. She had to have played Division I ball somewhere, or even professional beach volleyball, and she was beautiful as well. He didn't like himself for thinking like this, but wasn't it convenient that Gina had not shown up? They played an hour of volleyball, and the gang of Jim and Mike and Tony et al. Sat down for some beerskis on the front of David's rental unit. David took a sip of his Corona and looked around. Not only had Gina not phoned to tell him she was not coming, Karen, the top-notch volleyball player in the Red Hawk bikini, was sitting right next to him, as if she had taken the young girl's place. Karen had a surprisingly melodious voice, and yet, like most Americans when you meet them, was firing off question after question, as if she were an employer interviewing a job applicant. After a while, David went inside to pee, but when he came back out, Karen was gone. Another one gone? He looked around in the dimming light and didn't see her. The party was still raging, and David looked lost. He pulled out a Corona long neck from the fridge and called Gina. Karen had meanwhile crossed the road and swiftly approached a parked Jeep. She stopped at the rear entrance and looked over her shoulder to ensure none of the volleyball players could see her. In the dark light, it would have been impossible unless she had been followed. She banged on the door, which opened. She stepped inside, nodded to the 2 men who were in the back of the Jeep, and took off her baseball cap and blonde wig. "Okay, let's go," said one of the men as he removed his headphones and hung them on the computer screen. Chapter 11, Nasty, December 2018. Again! "I got to get back to work, D1, but first I got to go to the bathroom. What's the matter with you?" "Before you go to the bathroom is the perfect time for another quickie. The pressure!" D1 cried out almost too loudly. So David put his hand over her mouth, but she had to have it, and he was up to the task. They were face to face in what was not more than a broom closet, up against the wall in the restroom of a small Japanese sushi place right down from the WRIC, and in the middle of lunch hour. They heard some knocking on their door, which just made David accelerate and finish the job. Shidiwan was in ecstasy. David pulled away, urinated, washed his hands, and left. Shidiwan was right behind him, but locked the door before anyone else could enter. She took her time, cleaning up, redoing her makeup, and opening the door. A woman, waiting in agony to relieve herself, swore at Shidiwan, pushed her out of the way, and slammed the door behind her. Shidiwan could have crippled this woman with what she knew of martial arts, but she just smiled and rejoined David at his table. They usually didn't meet at this particular sushi place because it was too near the research lab, and they might run into one of their colleagues. A relationship with another lab researcher was not permitted, but one with someone like she, who was in the completely separate accounts and administration department, was possible. Still, it would have been very embarrassing to run into Director Chow and have to explain away their being in the restaurant together. It's been 11 weeks, Diwan, and still no vaccine. I spend my whole day thinking, and fucking me, she squealed, almost a bit too loudly and too girly for David's liking. Shh, he whispered. And David, you're eating that too fast. You're going to get sick. She looked around to see if anyone was looking at them. No one was. She ran her fingers along his beard. You were incredible, a sex machine. Take it to the bridge, she whispered in deference to the soul singer James Brown. You're tiring me out, Diwan. You can sleep any time you want in your little cubbyhole at the office. Director Chow said you could. He needs your brain power. I need your manpower. I don't like to go there too much because I'd be really tempted to bug you, said Diwan mischievously. The days rolled by. David had been working 11 weeks at the WRIC, feverishly looking for new vaccines to help mankind. David's work was fascinating, and he didn't notice whether it was sunny or raining outside. His work was his life, his joy, his reason for existing. He didn't realize how much of what he felt was actually determined by what he took for granted. For example, there was the perfectly air-conditioned lab with its choice of webcam displays behind the fake window frame, which would automatically create the perfect day. Then there was the staff that would arrive and leave on a phased basis so that few people had any contact with people from other labs. There were the comforts of home, like the 12 by 10 foot kitchen, which had a microwave, oven, a stove, fridge, and freezer. These were restocked every morning before the team arrived with sushi, fruit, milk, soda, beer, and pastries. The freezer stocked frozen meals. David had gotten into the swing of things. Most of his time was spent on his computer, followed by physical games and exercise. David was the ideas guy. That's why he had been hired. But his team players were equally skilled in finding fault with his ideas. It's not that they didn't like David. David was very popular, but that was their job. One of the best at poking holes in his hypotheses was Yasing, a computer scientist from Beijing. Yasing was a little smaller than David and a former chemistry major at the University of California, Berkeley. David found out he was also a top beach volleyball player. He found out when his team had a 4-on-4 volleyball game in the gym. Yasing was often spiking balls down David's face. Yasing was as intelligent in the workplace as he was on the volleyball court. He always saw the big picture, but was also able to find the little foible that didn't work. David thought again about not having found a solution to the vaccine problem, but that was not the only problem he had. There was also Diwan. It had been great fun to begin with. She'd initiated him in the apartment he eventually rented. Real estate agent Mi Tuao had never suspected anything and would sometimes knock on his door at 2 a.m. for sex. If they went out in the evening, she would often want sex in a public place. They would be sitting at dinner somewhere, and she would get that nasty look in her eye, and then they would have to use the restroom. This was fun, but he never knew what she might come up with. For example, one night they were in a nightclub slow dancing when she felt the need, but when they got to the restroom, she pulled out a whip and struck him across the back. Now you know what the women in Afghanistan feel when their husbands are amorous. And with that, she would tear off her panties and implore David to screw her. David would oblige because her bizarre behavior excited him, which was becoming more and more bizarre by the day as well as more sadistic. David suspected there was something wrong with her. David knew he needed to end the relationship, but how was he going to do it? Incredibly, the relationship had remained a secret at the lab, as she was not a member of the lab team. David decided to confide in Yasing and ask his advice. He met him at the local Starbucks. Oh my God, David, you didn't. You thought Diwan was in accounts and administration? That's stupidity to the nth degree. Accounting is her cover. She actually works for security. You're kidding me. I kid you not, Guy. You know she's a 4th-degree black belt, don't you? She's also a Krav Maga expert. You know that martial arts discipline the police practice to take people out? Do you also know she had an affair with a member of our team who disappeared? Once again, you're kidding me. I wish, David, because his body is probably floating in the Yangtze. He's dead? David looked very worried. No, now, I am kidding you. But he has disappeared. Yasing? What, David? I need a vacation. Well, there you go. 4 chapters from the Wuhan Plague by James Crew Allen and Richard Bonte, available right now in e-form, only on Amazon's Kindle. We only have 15 seconds left. To read other books by Richard Bonte and James Crew Allen, most of which are available in print and e-form, please go to richardbonte.com and click on Purchase Books Now. This is Richard Bonte, host of Curmudgeonly Yours on Society Bites Radio. So I'd like to thank our guests for being on Curmudgeonly Yours today. And please, if you like what you heard, send me an email to richard@richardbonte.com. And if you didn't, please keep your comments to yourself. Remember, this is Richard Bonte and Curmudgeonly Yours on Society Bites Radio, where everything is what it seems, nothing is what it seems, and what is not said is often of most interest.